Hey everybody, it's David again, and we're back with another episode of the Opposite of Cheating vlog, podcast, video chat, etc. I'm here with Dr. Aviva Legatt, who reached out to us and get a chance to meet somebody new and interesting in the field of AI adoption, and academics more generally. Today, we're going to have a wide-ranging conversation about AI adoption, about working with high school students in their search for college, and all sorts of other stuff. So, Aviva, thanks so much for joining.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And again, love the work that you're doing on academic integrity. And I think it's so needed.
Well, thank you. We're really happy to be doing it. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what it is you've been up to lately?
Thanks for that. So my background is in higher ed. I sat where a lot of you sat. I started my career in administration. I worked at the Wharton School, where most recently, before I left my full-time role, I was Senior Associate Director of Admissions. I was on freshman transfer admissions committees, oversaw summer programs for high school students. Meanwhile, I was getting my doctorate in higher ed. And I decided that I wanted to help people with this process. I had had a challenging college process myself when I was younger, and I had all this knowledge, and I wanted to give that back. So that's what led me to start my first business, which is called Ivy Insight. And then more recently, with the advent of GenAI, I found myself getting really intrigued by its capabilities. And as I continued to deepen my own knowledge through both formal and informal learning, I realized that AI is really the future of education. So I really invested a lot of time and effort to learning how to build with AI, how to use AI responsibly, and thought a lot about applications of AI in the higher education realm. My Forbes column, I've been writing for Forbes for about 10 years, and my Forbes column focuses on AI adoption. So I've been covering AI efforts all across the country and some in other countries as well. And so my interest in being involved in AI is really an interest in being involved in the future of education and the future of young people and those who are career changers in the workforce. And it's really going to impact everything. So I am honored to be working in this space and to be supporting institutions in their AI adoption strategy through my newer venture, which is called EdGenerative.
Well, that's a really broad range of things. Why don't we start by talking about admissions for a minute, since I think a lot of us don't think about what happens before our students show up in our classrooms. Tell us a little bit about how AI is changing the admissions game and how it's affecting who winds up coming into our classes.
Well, there's fascinating duality of that. One is the institutional piece. So a lot of institutions are using AI as part of the admissions review process. I wrote about this, I think, a couple of years ago in Forbes about how more and more institutions are adopting AI in at least the initial review. So they can use AI to review based on a set rubric of, grades, test scores. They may use sentiment analysis or other aspects of natural language processing to understand the student's narrative and be able to give kind of a conditional or a provisional acceptance that perhaps a human in the loop would then go in and do the second review. So some institutions are setting it up that way. At other places, it's just AI doing the process. And those are, I would say, at the less selective colleges where it's pretty much you're just meeting certain thresholds in terms of academic baselines. So you don't really need humans to review these applications if you're just operating under certain thresholds. And then, of course, there are submissions offices that are not using AI, but really, as the years have gone on, the last couple of years, this is pretty much standard. And also, a lot of institutions are using it to engage applicants early on. So there are a number of chatbot builders that are involved. You know about this, engaging students before they apply, following up with prospects and automating that in a strategic way that serves the institution's goals. So the advent of AI has really changed the game from the institutional side, from both the marketing and recruitment, as well as the review. And then from the applicant side, I think it's been a benefit and also a challenge to AI, because in my capacity with Ivy Insight, I've been working with students and families on this process. And in some ways, it's made the process for them so much easier because it's a lot easier to organize deadlines, requirements, essay topics. So for example, you could take a bunch of essay questions, you could plop them into AI, and you could have AI categorize your questions for you. So, you have to answer this set of questions probably about the similar topic and that set of questions about similar topics. So from that perspective, it's been a beautiful addition to the application process. But at the same time, we have to contend with students using AI to write their essays. And I have had so when I first noticed this, and I wrote about this in Business Insider, when I first discovered a student using it, I was really upset because I was like, you have to write your own essay. That's what we always did, right? Like we had to write our own work. But then I realized, not to say he should write all of his own work by, with AI, but I was realizing that once I called him out on it and he started dialing back his usage of AI, it was actually supporting him to get the ideas out, because he was a student who just had a lot of trouble articulating his points of view. And in recent years, what I have noticed about young people is that they struggle more so than prior generations with executive function issues and self-expression. And that is really correlating with the rise of smartphones as well as COVID. So a lot of them are really struggling. So AI is helping a lot of students to find a voice. And at the same time, though, AI can also completely overtake the student voice. So again, it's like this dual benefit as well as challenge. And so when I've worked with students in more recent years, with AI being out a couple of years now, what I found is that students who over rely on it, they tend to write a little bit too generically they don't really talk enough about their own experience. But for students who can use it to refine a little bit of the writing, helping with the editing, but they still have that originality of thought and voice, that's when, AI becomes a great unlock. And there's only one university in the entire nation at this time that prohibits AI usage at all, and that's Brown University. Most universities don't have an AI usage policy for admissions, and if they do, there's some provisions that allow the usage of AI. Again, it varies institution to institution. When you're watching this, the information I gave may be incorrect, so definitely double check that with the institutions. And of course, policies are always changing, so take what I said with a grain of salt. At the same time, I think people in admissions really recognize that, AI is helpful for the admissions process, so they don't necessarily want to totally ban it. So there's definitely a tough balance, and that's what, I've strived for with my clients, is really just helping them figure out how to use it in productive ways that assist them with finding their voice without it having completely overtake what they're trying to say and just essentially do the writing for them.
Do you get any feedback from clients who are back in school? Because I know that a lot of the AI policies in their classes are going to be somewhat more restrictive than that. And I wonder, because of course the point of admissions is to predict who's going to be successful in school, if you're seeing that there's a disconnect between those things, or if that's turning out not to be a problem. That's a really interesting finding.
That's a great question. And I think that the attitudes about AI usage really vary. And some students and parents are extremely worried that they're going to ruin their entire lives if they use AI, because they're going to be afraid that they're going to be caught cheating because they are using AI, and that this is going to ruin opportunities. So there are some people out there, and I'm not here to change anybody's mind about that necessarily. I hope I can, but that's not necessarily my role when I'm helping somebody with admissions, is to change their mind about using AI. But for those people who are in favor of using AI, then it's very, very helpful for them. So there's certainly a variability in attitudes. And what I have learned is that some K-12 institutions are just, completely banning it still. But I think we're really starting to see a shift in that. And I do think that parents can play a really helpful role in supporting their students to learn AI where there may be a gap in the school's ability to provide that, simply because they haven't had time to review the policy, or they're not sure how to do that. So that's why we're also, through my company, also working with K-12 institutions to look at those policies and examine all the recent developments, for example, agentic AI, and their implications on learning.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in all of this. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been starting to think about, and more, maybe just as importantly, help institutions think about questions of AI as it relates to academic integrity in particular?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of that comes with I would say there's really two main parts of that. One is the policy piece, and two is the education/training piece of that. So a lot of the times the policies lag behind, not because institutions don't want to do the responsible thing, but because there aren't enough people who know exactly what is this AI thing, what are its capabilities, and how does this apply to my day to day? And finally, why should it change what I'm doing day to day? And what I'm doing day to day is really valuable. So there are a lot of faculty who are afraid of AI, who don't want to use it, and also they don't know enough about it necessarily to create a policy. So what we've been doing at my company is supporting institutions to create policies, but also building in that education for the people of this is what AI is. These are examples of responsible use policies. This is an example of an AI use policy that may not be as effective. Here's what you want to watch out for or make sense of before you implement an AI use policy. So it's really, institution to institution, there's so much variability in, I would say, the cultural will to implement policy, but I'm seeing more and more institutions are either working towards a policy or working on improving a policy. And I think that's a really positive place to be in, because by setting policy and infrastructure, we're setting up students and the community for greater success, not just today, but for years down the road when more and more people will be using AI. And also just want to mention a sidebar that's relevant here is that my most recent Forbes article cited a survey where 90% of students of all age groups, doesn't matter if they're going to trade school or Harvard, or if they're 18 years old or 60 years old, about 90% of students are using AI. And so if institutions are not setting a policy, then they're really missing an opportunity, one, to be part of that education of a student, because the student is sort of getting an independent education with the assistance of AI, whether that AI is overtaking what they're doing or supplementing, and that is going to vary. And then secondly, the institutions who are not doing this are missing an opportunity to, provide that structure and that guideline that will set them up for success afterwards. Because I think the role of the institution is ideally to educate the student in all ways and support them to be successful after graduation. And if they're not looking at AI usage and not helping students with that, then they're really missing out on a huge part of people's education. In fact, 90% of people's education.
Absolutely. So how do you recommend that institutions manage the ambiguity that comes with different courses, faculty, and assessments having really fundamentally different needs for the use of AI, ranging from banning it in certain important cases to teaching students how to use it creatively at the other end of the spectrum?
Mhm. Great question. Well, I saw a great model from an institution down in Florida recently, and they had a model that was red light, yellow light, green light. So some usage, yellow light meaning, sometimes it's okay with citations. Green light, AI is absolutely essential to this assignment, or red light meaning this assignment cannot use AI at all. And so I think by having a framework like that professor, like very simple, that professors can use with various assignments or in specific courses, and notating which courses are this and which courses are that, that helps to set the expectation. Because the last thing we want to do is bring students in, they're using AI, they're being referred to student conduct for cheating, but the problem was there wasn't any policy that said this is cheating, this is not cheating. So we need to support professors to implement this kind of language in their syllabi to explain when it's acceptable to use AI, and when you use AI, is citation necessary or not, depending on the assignment. So that's a huge part of it. I think I got your question, but I may have missed a part because I got a little
No,
carried away by my answer. So tell me if I missed something.
no, you're great, but you made me think of a follow-up, which is for that institution or in general, how are the professors or the syllabus writers, since it's not always the same people, being trained to think about when to use which of those different lanes or pathways?
Mhm.
Uh, because
I
that's
think
the
that's
critical
where
question.
I think that's where training comes in. I think the institutions that are more ahead are really investing in infrastructure around AI through, full-time hires and folks that can come in and help to set the groundwork for that kind of training and education about when is it okay, when is it not okay. And there are some courses where it just doesn't make any sense to use AI at all. One of the things that we've built through EdGenerative is we have this agent where you can put in a syllabus and then it'll automatically generate some copy about extra credit and how to use AI through extra credit. And then it'll also give professors suggestions of assignments that they could add to their syllabus if they would like that incorporate AI usage so that AI literacy, AI fluency can be started to build in. So but yes, there's a lot of variability, but these are some strategies that I think are supportive of AI adoption, AI integration into the academic space.
That sounds like a really interesting way to think about it for sure. So given that tool, what advice, maybe let's do the advice question twice. What advice are you giving to parents and families as they're beginning to get to get ready for the college application process? As the dad of a high school senior, this is fresh on my mind. What advice would you give them in the age of AI? And then we can do the institution question next.
Sure. I would say for every parent, make sure that your student has some level of education around how to use AI, what its capabilities are, and what responsible use looks like. And it's really hard because most people are still learning AI themselves. But that's something not you specifically, but one could do with their learning alongside their child with AI. There are a lot of free courses out there that are provided by the major LLMs. Of course, those courses are self-serving towards those LLMs, but at least the information is out there. It's free. There are also, paid stackable credentials that folks can get on agent building and GenAI usage. So those courses and micro credentials may be helpful for a student. What I advise for students who are applying now, if they're going to college, that they think about college as both a degree as well as a set of skills, right? Because we need a broad base of knowledge and that ability to critically think, but we also need specific skills that are not currently very well represented in our workforce right now. I wrote about this a lot in Forbes. There's a $1.1 trillion annual skills gap between what the workforce is demanding and the talent that we have in the United States right now. So my best advice to parents is help your child become AI fluent and help yourself become AI fluent as well, because that will support them in success in whatever fields that they go into. Because in my opinion, AI plus expertise in something is a major unlock for success in this new economy that we're entering.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I feel like a lot of knowledge economy jobs are going to go away because you're not going to need as many people to do the same knowledge work. And so I guess being able to use AI and having that competency will at least give you a fighting chance in the limited knowledge economy going forward.
Mhm. Absolutely. And this is why I'm hoping more schools and universities will incorporate AI, because if they don't, they're not setting their students up for the best success possible in this new world.
It'll be interesting to see because so much of the AI right now is chatbots, generative AI. But you alluded to this when you're talking about admissions, expert systems and things like that. Most AI for most of the history of AI has not either been chatbots or generative, and people act as if it's the only sort of AI there is.
Exactly. It's what people have access to. It's what's free. It's what's easy. And you type in a question, you get a response. It's kind of a very familiar rhythm, if you will. But the agentic piece and the different ways you can use AI for data analysis and planning. There's so many different functions that AI can serve, and having that lens to think about your own workflow and your own knowledge base and how you can use AI to support yourself in enhancing your knowledge base, that is a skill in and of itself that I'm cautiously optimistic that students will continue to learn more and more frequently.
Talking about AI, let's talk about not AI. As you're helping students and also institutions, what are the durable human skills that transcend time and AI ability that you really think that institutions and individuals should be focusing on?
Great question. I think it's, critical thinking, communication, and relationship building, because those are pieces of the AI puzzle that AI cannot solve on its own. So AI can help us critically think, but we also have to double check the outputs that we're getting. AI is very authoritative. So if it tells you something, it sounds like the truth, even if it's not exactly the whole truth. It might be part of a truth. It might be fully the truth. But it just really depends on what it's saying. So always going with that critical lens. I know for myself, when I first started using it, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like it knows everything. And then I realized as I used it more, I was like, oh, actually doesn't know everything. It really missed some really important details. And I need to prompt differently, or I need to think about it this way, or maybe I need to put this information to another LLM and kind of verify. And then I need to go to the website and check that. So it's not a simple, question, answer, and everything is going to be solved. And I think it's very tempting. And like I said, I've fallen into that myself, especially when I was first starting to use it a couple years back. So I think that's a key piece, that critical thinking, and then communication. So yeah, certainly AI can help us think about our words. We can use AI to write speeches or, put talking points together. But when we're in an improvisational dialogue, particularly in person, we can't use AI in that context. So we need to know what our major points are, how to communicate them, and how to connect with the audience that we're part of. And then the relationship building piece, I think is really key, because I think relationships have always been currency, but I think in the fact that we can outsource so many tasks to AI, the task no longer kind of is the relationship as much. It's really about the connection, how you look at problems, and making sure you're collaborating, whether professionally or personally. So those are the three core competencies. And I was asked this on a recent panel, and I joked that we're going to need all these skills when it's humans versus robots, and we're in this AGI world, because I think these are uniquely human skills that that really set us apart from machines, because we're never going to process information as quickly as AI, but AI cannot interact with us the way that we can interact with each other.
Yeah, I talk about the notion of intentionality a lot. Until these machines can demonstrably show that they understand that the data they're working with, it actually represents a real thing, they're never going to have the kind of ethical standards that people do, right? If you think that it's just data, you're going to react quite differently to things than you are if you understand that there is something outside of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what have I not asked you about? What are you working on that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure we get onto the talk?
That's a great question. I think, really just want to emphasize that tension, I think, between what people think about as academic integrity and what the future of the work needs. And I just want to highlight that. And I know we've covered it, but just to dig into that for a moment of, wanting that academic experience to have a purity to it, of the interchange between professors, students, the course material, and all of that is really important. And considering how that the best of that can stay intact while incorporating AI, I think that's the real work of colleges and universities, and eventually schools, particularly for the older grades. As time goes on, the workforce is going to be demanding these skills, and we have to think about how we can adjust as a sector to meet the needs of this future economy. And it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be painful, but the sooner we recognize this tension and this challenge, the easier the transition will be. So that would be what I would want to emphasize. And also to say that this work is really hard, but it can also be fun, and it can unlock new data and new insights that weren't there before. So some of the pieces that I've worked on that I haven't mentioned, that have been supporting institutions are aspects like a college to career mapper. So helping to look at the institution, what is it offering? What are the local workforce demands? And then where's the alignment or lack of alignment there? And so we're able to look at so many more data points, so much more quickly with AI. And I think that's a really powerful way to help institutions to re-steer a little bit given where we are. And then I would say the other piece we didn't touch on directly specifically is governance. And so thinking about how we can reframe governance and get different stakeholders involved in adopting AI on campus and implementing AI on campus. And I can't name them all off the top of my head, and I would be missing some if I tried. But, in my column in Forbes, I do my best to highlight success stories and interesting institutions that are doing great work. And so my goal with my column is to get the information out there so that institutions can make good choices about how to deal with these changes. So that's my hope, is that, read the column and then get support if you're looking for support with that AI adoption strategy piece.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Aviva Legatt, thank you so much for your time today. I know the time on these goes extremely fast. It feels like we're just getting started. But we really appreciate your insights, especially from a perspective that's so different from so many of ours. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.